Hello YouTube. Today we will look at what the top Russian military pilots talk about when they see the videos released by the Pentagon. And let me first give you the background. In the late April of the year 2020, the Pentagon released unclassified footage showing unidentified aerial phenomena captured by Navy aircraft. It had circulated in the public for years. The videos showing the UFOs were initially released by the Stars Academy of Arts and Science back in 2017 and 2018, and then they were acknowledged by the US Navy. One was taken in November of 2004 and the other two were captured in January 2015. After a thorough review, the department has determined that the authorized release of these unclassified videos does not reveal any sensitive capabilities or systems and does not impinge on any subsequent investigations of military airspace incursions by unidentified aerial phenomena. That's what the Pentagon spokesman said. Department of Defense is releasing the videos in order to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that has been circulating was real, or whether or not there's more to the videos. The aerial phenomena observed in the videos remain characterized as unidentified. Well, this 2004 incident occurred 100 miles into the Pacific Ocean when the two U.S. Navy pilots on a training mission were dispatched to investigate objects being tracked by a Navy cruiser for 2 weeks prior. The pilots found one oval-shaped aircraft hovering 50 feet above the water that quickly descended and fled when they moved closer. When they were on their way to their rendezvous point 60 miles away, they were radioed by the ship that the object had been was there and traveled the distance in less than a minute. Okay, now let's look at the opinions of Russia's military pilots, some of whom have held very high ranks in the USSR and modern Russia. I will add my comments too. I intentionally did not want to present opinions of reporters, journalists, Russian politicians, and other busybodies. Videos of unidentified flying objects usually differ in strong distortions, and pilots in reality see everything differently. Vladimir Popov, a distinguished Russian military pilot, Major General, head of the Federal Office of Aerospace Search and Rescue at the Russian Defense Ministry. That's what he told Russian information agency Novosti. So he commented on 3 videos published by the Pentagon, which allegedly depicted UFOs. The video it was filmed by crews of combat aircraft in 2004 and 2015. He said, "In my practice, there have been several cases where there have been some unknown events. About 25 years ago, my crew observed an unidentified flying object in the area of Lviv, near the Polish border. Still cannot say what it was. Events unfolded during that night flight in difficult weather conditions in the clouds with the accompanying vision of the city lights. After our report, we had to sign a non-disclosure agreement just in case, so there was no panic and something we suddenly did not understand, and so forth. Now, a quarter of a century later, I'm talking about it for the first time." That's significant coming from Popov. The general specified that the UFOs on videos can be atmospheric, radar phenomena, or optical deception. At the same time, he did not rule out that it could be tests of new equipment, and the pilots got into their zone by accident. The recording greatly distorts what is happening. Perhaps the American pilots who observed the unidentified phenomena also differently. Always the instrumentation steals the piece of information that our optic nerve can take. Loss of information component is usually very large. Another feature of the brain, as a rule, when something is not clear, turns on the imagination, which speculates the picture. That's what the general believes. Magomed Tolboyev is a former high-profile Soviet-era test pilot who initially came to public attention as a test pilot for the Buran space shuttle. He continued his career after the collapse of the Soviet Union, working on both civilian and military aircraft in Russia, and held several governmental appointments, including in the aviation ministry. He was decorated with the title Hero of Russia and other honors before retiring from active service. He continues to be a part-time consultant and commentator on aviation issues. So military pilot Major General Magomed Tolboyev, in an interview with the Russian newspaper Daily Storm, admitted that earlier videos of the meeting of U.S. Air Force pilots with UFOs could be thrown in on purpose, especially thrown, as he said, by the Pentagon for additional funds from Congress. Tolboyev also did not rule out that this was an attempt by the American authorities to distract the population from the problems associated with the coronavirus. Reserve Colonel Sergei Yakimov agreed with his colleagues, but added that he and other domestic pilots, military pilots, met with flying saucers but tried not to advertise it. This is very important and something that I keep bringing up in my books and lectures and videos and so forth. There is a great amount of information about encounters of Soviet and Russian military pilots with UFOs. Very interesting encounters, but they did not want to talk about it for a number of reasons. Now, Tolboyev continued that the United States does it all the time. Look at their story when they throw in all sorts of information in the media. First of all, this happens when it is necessary to divert the attention of American society, or when the Pentagon really needs money, an extra $300 to $400 million, and it needs to be delivered by Congress. It is not typical for us Russians, and they have it in their blood. That's what Tolboyev said. He also said that the Soviet and Russian pilots and their foreign counterparts from Italy, Brazil, and Argentina repeatedly met with UFOs. However, all of them had to limit themselves to oral narrative. And the Major General lamented because there is no single system of analysis and information collection in any country. He said that it was done in the Soviet Union when the twice hero of the Soviet Union, Georgy Grechko, a cosmonaut, and Marina Popovich did it. And there is no single approach in the world, as there is no international organization that would organize all this, so information about all cases is transmitted only verbally, Tolboyev added. Major General noted that he had not met with UFOs personally, but such experience was experienced by authoritative pilots whom he trusted. Now, my comments. With due respect to the military expertise of Major General, I must say that this anti-American rant does not add respect to him. It reminds me of the worst examples of the Soviet propaganda that was ever present in my youth. But I cannot recall an example when a Soviet general will publicly say that Americans, that it's in their blood. Also, this Major General either does not know or chooses not to know that maybe he doesn't know the history of Soviet military UFO research. The Soviets had a very unified military and academic research program titled initially Setka. It was a comprehensive and incomparable secret program that operated over 13 years throughout the nation. Soviet Union. It was a single system of analysis and information collection. Cosmonaut Grechko started believing in existence of extraterrestrial intelligence late in his life. And my acquaintance, now late Marina Popovich, was an active promoter of UFO research in the Soviet Union and then after that Russian Federation. She was a military pilot, author of many books, but she was not part of any official Soviet program for UFO research, unlike her former husband, Pavel Popovich. Please see my videos about this program, Setka, and other programs. which they used civilian programs to siphon out information from the population. It's very interesting, very unique to the Soviet totalitarian state. I want you to look at the statements of the Soviet military brass about UFO encounters and sightings in the USSR, which I presented in my videos. I will put the links in the description to this video so you can see for yourself. Now, let's look at another opinion. A military pilot sniper, retired Colonel Sergei Yakimov, also confirmed that information that he and his colleagues met incomprehensible objects in the sky. But even in those days, it was not quite perceived correctly. It could, roughly speaking, be dismissed because such messages in general were not welcomed, he stressed. So this was very interesting. On one hand, you had instruction from the Soviet military authorities, and this is my addition, Paul Stonehill. You had instructions that you had to report all unusual phenomena, whether in the sky or in the waters, and there were certain instructions to be filled out, and all this information was going into 2 research centers, super secretive. And but this happened, let's say, from 1978 on to 1991, and a few years after, of course, even after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So he might be referring to anything that had taken place before, but in general, they didn't like to talk about UFOs because they were facing ideological constraints. So Yakimov also suggested that political subtext behind the publication of the UFO video, well, it cannot be discounted. It always happens in the difficult times. People should be given spectacles and bread. So there is a probability, he's saying, that the Americans might have done it on purpose, releasing videos at this time. And now I want to tell you a very interesting statement by a Russian military veteran. He was once advisor to the president of Russia, and Valery Burkov, who is better known now as Cyprian the monk, he was a participant in the war in Afghanistan. He said that he personally met with UFOs. In the Air Force for a long time, there was an order that all such phenomena, meetings with UFOs, must be recorded. Drawings, pictures have to be taken, photographs. There must be, one had to record on magnetic tape all that happened, narrative, and so on. So, for the Air Force, encounters with UFOs are not strange, according to Valery Burkov. He said that he met UFOs twice himself, or encountered, let's put it that way. In 1979 in Chelyabinsk, and in 1990 in Moscow. And it was not just him, but a bunch of people, using his words. In the first case, it was one object. In another, it was 5 objects at once, he added. That's very interesting and very serious. 1979, please look at my videos about the Arctic encounters that year. And 1990, very interesting, there was a wave of UFO sightings over the USSR, which I mentioned in my videos as well. Now let's talk a little bit more about Burkov. He served in the Soviet Army from 1974. After graduating in 1978 from the Chelyabinsk Higher Military Aviation School of Navigators, he became a navigator-operator of long-range aviation. Then he served as a navigator-operator in aviation units, including in the Soviet Far East. And he flew on the Tu-16 missile carriers. He flew over the Pacific Ocean and was escorted by the U.S. aircraft carrier from carriers Midway and Enterprise. In 1981, he was preparing to be transferred to Afghanistan, but during the medical commission, he was written off from flight work for health reasons. After treatment, he had tuberculosis. After treatment, Captain Burkov sought to regain his flight post and joined the active part of the 40th Army, Soviet troops in Afghanistan, where his father, Colonel Anatoly Burkov, served. while Colonel Burkov was on board of Mi-8 helicopter, which came under fire from a large caliber machine gun. After the helicopter crashed, barrels of aviation kerosene exploded in the amphibious compartment, resulting in the death of Colonel Burkov. Since 1984, Valery Burkov participated in combat operations in Afghanistan. As an advanced air gunner, repeatedly took parts in the operations of units of the 17th Motorized Rifle Brigade in the province of Kandahar, being among the combat orders of motorized rifles. He provided them with the fire support by adjusting the Soviet airstrikes on enemy positions. In April of 1984, during a combat operation, Burkov was seriously wounded and lost both of his legs. And in a medical military hospital near Kabul, the wounded man was taken to the field surgeon, who saved his fractured right hand. So he was able to get prostheses, learn to walk unaided, even without a cane. And despite his injury, he returned to action. In 1988, Burkov graduated from the Gagarin Air Force Academy, continued his service in the General Staff of the Air Force, and later received the rank of colonel. So this was a very experienced pilot. And by the way, in August of 1991, he was appointed as an advisor to the President of the Russian Federation for the disabled, and became chairman of the coordinating committee for disabled persons under the President of Russia. And during the 1991 events, he was in the White House in the Soviet Union, so to say. And these were historical events in the history of the Soviet Union, which disintegrated not long thereafter. But before it did, President of the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev, in October of 1991, Colonel Burkov was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union with the award of Lenin and Gold Star Medal. And he was, like I said, the advisor to the President of the Russian Federation. In 1992, he actually came up with the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And in 1994 and 1998, he was a student of the Military Academy of the General Staff. He's also known as a songwriter. These songs are dedicated to the events of the Afghan War and Soviet soldiers who had served there. And in 2016, Valery Burkov adopted monasticism and a name of Kyprian. So he became a monk. And I am sure there are more opinions among the Russian military about Pentagon's UFOs, but they're not being released or published. And there is a certain level of permission that is exercised, and they just cannot speak. By the way, on May 4, the Russian information agency Novosti published excerpts of their interview with me regarding the Pentagon videos. But I am more of a historian, and yes, I was a participant in the history of Soviet and post-Soviet UFO phenomena history. I was in touch with Russian UFO researchers, and Ukrainian, of course, and Central Asian. I collect and analyze statements of those who have encountered unidentified flying objects in the sky over their nation and unidentified submersible objects in the waters around Russia and the world. But what counts is the view of the military experts and their confirmation of the UFO observations in the USSR when it was not really safe to reveal such observations or encounters openly. What's interesting is what's going on in Russia now, and to put it briefly, the research goes on. It's very different from what had taken place before, and there are much younger and active players today, and we'll speak about it later, because I will bring you more videos about USOs and UFOs observed and encountered by such experts. So thank you for your attention. Please support my research if you can. You can find links in the description. And hopefully I'll bring you more interesting subjects in the future. Thank you.